Welcome to Simpler Bible, a daily journey to biblical understanding. We start Daniel today. Daniel, love this guy, love this book. Super interesting stuff. We're going to take 3 days to go through Daniel. So Daniel's chapters 1 through 3. And here's what I need you to pay attention to. Verse 1, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. So Daniel, the book of Daniel starts, you've got, roughly 19 years before the fall of Jerusalem, okay? So 19 years before the fall of Jerusalem, after Jehoiakim is king, we still have Jeconiah, aka Jehoiachin, who's going to be king for 3 months. Then we've got Zedekiah, who's going to be king. This right here is 13 years before the book of Ezekiel starts. So Daniel, even though it comes after the book of Ezekiel, this part begins 13 years earlier than the book of Ezekiel. So at this point, you've got Jeremiah, who's the prophet in Jerusalem. At this point, he has been a prophet for 21 years, Jeremiah has been. And now you've got Daniel, a young man who's being taken into captivity during the 1st year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar. So again, Daniel, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, all interwoven. And it says this, in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the vessels of the house of God. And he brought them to the land of Shinar, to the house of his God, and placed the vessels in the treasury of his God. And then the king commanded Ashpenaz, his chief eunuch, to bring some of the peoples of Israel, both of the royal family and of nobility. So that might be something you've missed before from Daniel. These are the people from the royal family and from nobility. So Daniel is part of probably the line of Judah, probably part of the line of the kings. And so this is some of the people that were taken into captivity. Daniel's one of those. He is a youth without blemish, of good appearance, skillful in wisdom, endowed with knowledge, understanding and learning, competent to stand in the king's palace and to teach them the literature and the language of the Chaldeans. The king assigned them a daily portion of the food that the king ate and the wine that he drank. So he was given a portion of food and wine, and they were to be educated for 3 years. Hold that in your head. That'll be important in a moment. At the end of that time, they were to stand before the king. Among these were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah of the tribe of Judah. So see, of the tribe of Judah, like we said, of the royalty, of the line of the king. The chief of the eunuchs gave the names Daniel, he called Belteshazzar. Hananiah, he called Shadrach, Mishael, Meshach, and Azariah, he called Abednego. So when we read in a little bit later about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, those are Daniel's friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. But Daniel resolved that he would not defile himself with the king's food or the wine that he drank. Therefore he asked the chief of the eunuchs to allow him not to defile himself. And God gave Daniel favor and compassion in the sight of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear the Lord my king, who assigned your food and your drink, for why should he see you in worse condition than all the other young men your own age, that you would endanger my head with the king? Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had assigned over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, test your servants for 10 days. Let us be given vegetables to eat and water to drink. And then let our appearance and the appearance of the youths who eat the king's food be observed by you, and deal with your servants according to what you see. So he listened to them in this matter, and he tested them for 10 days. At the end of 10 days, it was seen that they were better in appearance, fatter in flesh, than all the youths who ate the king's food. So the steward took away their food and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 youths, God gave them learning and skill in literature, wisdom, and Daniel had the understanding of all dreams and visions. So this is interesting. A couple of things. One, there's a book on it called like the Daniel fast or whatever. Daniel, why are we using Daniel as a model for how to fast? That's so stupid. Fasting is not even mentioned here. Daniel's a Jew. He's living among the Babylonians, and he's not willing to eat the profane food of the Babylonian people, right? And so it says that he didn't want to eat their food. He didn't want to drink their wine. That was back in verse 8. So he only ate vegetables, and he was doing really well. Like, I've literally heard people go, and this is why we should be vegetarians. And it's like they're forgetting that everybody else in the Bible is eating meat. Like, why are you... It's so ridiculous what we do. Quit allegorizing the text. Quit making it be something that it's not. Daniel did this. Daniel did this for a little while, he and his buddies, where they refused to eat the king's portions, and they ate only vegetables. Daniel didn't do this for the next 70 years. We'll see in 2 days that when he was praying, he literally, at this point, it's 70 years later in 2 days when we're going to look at Daniel again. But at this point, he's praying, and he puts aside the meat and the wine to pray. So he clearly goes back to meat and wine. It's just this is a period of time for him. Please don't make something of it more than you're supposed to make of it. And then it says this, at the end of the time when the king had commanded they should be brought in, the chief and the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar. The king spoke with them. Among all of them, none were found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So they stood, that means served, before the king. How long were they supposed to do this? 3 years. 3 years was their training. And it says this in verse 20, and in every matter of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and the enchanters that were in his kingdom. And Daniel served there until the first year of the king of Cyrus. That'll be really important. That's 70 years later. Now, a couple of things. What we do is we read up in the beginning of chapter 1 that they're supposed to be trained for 3 years. And then we read in verse 18, at the end of that time, they were so impressive, they served the king. So we think, 3 years later. Daniel chapter 2 does not begin 3 years later. Daniel chapter 2 begins 1 year later, okay? So Daniel chapter 1, Nebuchadnezzar has become king. It's his first year. Look at where Daniel chapter 2 starts. In the second year of the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar, he had dreams, and his spirit was troubled, and his sleep left him. So Daniel chapter 1 happens, and it covers 3 years of time. Daniel chapter 2 is after only 1 year of time. And so Daniel 2 is a little bit of a rewind. You're going back a little bit. You're going back at least a year, year and a half. And so the king has a dream, and he calls for all of his leaders. He says, I need you guys to tell me what my dream means. And he says, tell me what my dream means. Tell me what it means so that I can understand it. And they said to him, look, tell us what the dream is. This is chapter 2, verse 7. Just tell us what the dream is and we'll tell you what it means. And he says, no, I know that you're trying to gain time because you see that the word from me is firm. And so he tells them, he's like, I'm not going to tell you what my dream is because I don't want you just to make up some garbage. I don't want you just to make up a false interpretation. The way that I'll know that you're able to interpret my dream is you have to tell me what my dream was first. And then after that, you can tell me the interpretation of the dream. And so they say this, they say, there is not a man on earth who can meet the king's demands, for no great man or powerful king has ever asked such a thing of any magician or enchanter of the Chaldeans. No one can show the king except for the gods, whose dwelling is not with mankind. And because the king was angry and furious, he commanded that all the wise men of Babylon be put to death. So he said, okay, look, tell me what my dream is and tell me what its meaning is. And they're like, tell us what the dream is. We'll tell you. He's like, I'm not going to do that. I need to know that you really know what the dream was. And he goes, tell me or I'll kill you. And they're like, we can't. Like, how can we know your dream? It's your dream. It's in your brain. And he's like, all right, I'll put you all to death. Well, Daniel finds out about it. And he says, look, he goes, before you put me and my buddies to death, give me a couple of days. Let me spend a couple of days praying on this. So Daniel 2:17, Daniel went to his house and made the matter known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. And he told them to seek mercy from the God of heaven concerning this mystery so that Daniel and his companions would not be destroyed with the rest of the men of Babylon. And then the mystery was revealed to Daniel in a vision of the night. And Daniel blessed the God of heaven and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. God changed the times and the seasons. He removed kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals the deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might. You have made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's matter. So Daniel went to Arioch, whom the king had appointed to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He said, don't destroy the wise men of Babylon, but bring me before the king, and I will tell the king his interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste and said, I've found a man among the exiles of Judah, a man who can make known to you the king's interpretation. Remember, Daniel's only been in Babylon for 1 year at this point. He hadn't even finished his training in Babylon yet. So the king declared to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, are you able to make known to me the dream that I have seen and its interpretation? Daniel said, no wise man, no enchanter, no magician, no astrologer can show the king the mystery that the king has asked. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what is going to happen in the latter days. Your dream and the visions of your head as you lay in bed were these. To you, O king, as you lay in bed, came thoughts that would be after this. He who reveals mysteries has made known to you what is to be. But as for me, this mystery has been revealed to me, not because of wisdom that I have more than anybody else, but in order that the interpretation may be made known to the king, that you may know the thoughts of your mind. And he begins to tell the king his vision. And he says, you saw a great statue, a great statue made of gold. The head was gold, the chest was and arms were of silver, the middle and the thighs were of bronze, the legs were of iron, and the feet were part iron and part clay. As you looked, a large stone was cut out, struck the image in the clay and iron feet, and broke it, and destroyed the image. And then the iron and the clay and the bronze and the silver and the gold all together were broken in pieces. This was the dream. And now let me tell you the interpretation, Nebuchadnezzar. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power and the might and the glory, and into whose hands he was given, you are the gold. Another kingdom after you will arrive, and then a third kingdom of bronze, and then a fourth king of iron. And then you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron. And that's a divided kingdom. And then you saw in those days, in the last days, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. So the idol, the kingdoms, the nations, the powers will come to an end, and God will set up a kingdom that can never be destroyed. He says, just as you saw that a kingdom was cut out from the mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what will be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation is true. King Nebuchadnezzar fell down on his face and paid honor to David. To Daniel. How long has Daniel been there? 1 year. And he commanded that an offering and incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of lords, and the revealer of mysteries, for you have shown me this mystery. And the king gave Daniel high honors and many great gifts, and made him a ruler over the entire province of Babylon, and the chief prefect of all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request to the king, and the king then appointed a Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the king's court. I need you to catch this. Daniel is elevated to power within 1 year of living in Babylon, and he brings up his buddies with him, and he is put in charge, and he's living in the king's court. You know what that should sound like to you? That should sound like Joseph to you from Genesis, where Joseph is elevated to the place to serve the king. That should sound to you like, who did I forget just now? Moses. That should sound to you like Moses. That should sound to you like Esther. These are the places where God puts people in positions of authority to protect his people. And Daniel is in authority now. He is in authority in Babylon 18 years before Jerusalem's going to fall. 18 years before the rest of the captives are going to come to Jerusalem. He's in authority now. Let's do the math really quickly. He's in authority 7 years before Ezekiel's going to be living in Babylon. So when Ezekiel and that group of people get taken into captivity in Babylon, Daniel's already been in authority for 7 years, ruling there, which makes a softer landing place for the rest of the exiles who are going to come to that place. So super, super cool. I wish chapter 3 told us the timeline. It doesn't. So let's keep reading. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, also known as Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, come in to the service of the king, and pick up with me in Daniel chapter 3 quickly. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 60 cubits. And he set it up on the plain of Dura. So 60 cubits tall is 90 feet tall, 9 feet wide. He makes a golden statue. And King Nebuchadnezzar tells everybody, look, I'm going to play some music. Whenever you hear the music played, everybody bows down and worships this golden idol that I've built. Whoever does not fall down and worship it will immediately be thrown into the fire. So as soon as you hear the music, bow down and worship it. At that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. That's verse 8 and 9. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, look, some of the Jews, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, when you play your music, they don't bow down and worship the idol. At this point, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are already in authority. They're already ruling in Babylon. They're already governors, basically. And so he says, you've said that anyone who doesn't bow down to the idol should be thrown in the fire. So Nebuchadnezzar gathers Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego together, and he says, is it true, verse 14, is it true that you don't serve my gods, that you don't worship the golden image that I've set up? Now, I'll give you one more chance. If you're ready, when you hear the sound of the horn and the pipe and the lyre and the trigon and the harp and the bagpipe, when you hear it, if you fall down and worship my idol, good. But if you don't, I will immediately cast you into the furnace. And what God, I love it when the idol worshipers say this, and what God can deliver you out of my hand? Do you remember the king of Assyria who said the same thing? When he is coming to attack King Hezekiah in Jerusalem, and he goes, what other nation's God has been able to save them? I've destroyed every other nation's God. He goes, your gods will be the same. But he didn't know he was coming against Yahweh God, right? So Nebuchadnezzar's like, what God could possibly save you from the fire? So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered the king, O King Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves to you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, if he doesn't deliver us, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods. We will not worship the golden image that you have set up. Nebuchadnezzar was filled with rage, and the expression of his face was changed against the three men. He ordered the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than it was usually heated, and he ordered some of his strongest men to tie them up and to throw them into the furnace. These men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, their other garments, and they were thrown into the fiery furnace. Because the fire was so hot, the soldiers that threw them into the furnace died from the heat. King Nebuchadnezzar looked into the furnace, and he stood up in astonishment, and he said, how many men did we cast into the fire? 3? Why then do I see 4? And the 4th one like the son of the living gods, and all 4 of them unbound, walking around in the midst of the fire. Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace, and he declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of God Most High, come out, come here. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps and the prefects and the governors and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had no power over their bodies of these men. The hair on their head was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and they didn't even smell like fire or smoke. Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him, who disobeyed the king's command, yielded up their bodies to death rather than serve and worship any god except their own. Therefore I declare this decree. Listen to what King Nebuchadnezzar says. Any people, nation, or language that says anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be torn limb from limb and their houses laid in ruin, for there is no other God who can rescue in this way. What had he said a few minutes ago? What God could possibly save you? And now he goes, man, there is no God like this God. And the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had already been elevated to power because Daniel interceded for them. And now, because of this, they're elevated even more. Super cool stories. I love the book of Daniel. And tomorrow we will hit up Daniel 4 through 6. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for journeying with us today at Simpler Bible through another section of Scripture where we come to know and understand God a little bit better. Look, if you're brand new to Simpler Bible, we have all sorts of resources available for you. Go to our website, simplerbible.com, and there you can find these videos, you can find our podcast, you can find links to our social media, and you can even find a blog post with additional scriptures if you want to go into a little bit more study than we had time to cover in this podcast and video today. We hope that this tool will be exactly that for you, a tool. Not something that replaces your daily walk with God, but something that enhances your daily walk with God and helps you to know and enjoy Him more. Thank you so much for being part of this, and we'll see you again tomorrow.